And now for a quick look at our Kenyan markets. We start off with the NSE, which closed the day in the red, still over the 5,000 mark, but down marginally by 0.11%. And on the currency front, we see that Kenyan shillings also weaker against the US dollar. That's at 86.3, reflecting a 0.12% loss on the day. Joining us now from our Nairobi studios to give us an update on the Kenyan markets is Kuria Kamau. He's a research analyst at Kestrel Capital. Kuria, thank you so much for making the time to join us once again. Let's get your highlights of stock performances today.
Performance today, turnover was up, driven by trading on KCB, Safaricom, and East African breweries. All three stocks noted net foreign investor buying. The index, as you mentioned earlier, was down, but the all share was up. Generally, yeah, and foreign investor participation was down compared to yesterday. But generally, today has been a relatively normal day of trading.
Right, let's look at the big story coming out of Kenya today, and of course this being that power tariffs have been brought down. Is this good news for both business and consumers in terms of the detail that this particular reduction refers to?
Yes, exactly. It's very good news for both small consumers and also small businesses, which rely heavily on power. The thing you'll notice about Kenya is our power costs generally tend to be very high. The government argues that for us to become competitive in attracting foreign direct investment and also attracting more and encouraging more people to set up manufacturing businesses, we have to keep our power tariffs low. But it's a loss for Kenya Power, which is the sole distributor of power. They're hoping for an increase as well as shareholders of Kenya Power, but that didn't come through today.
But how do you think Kenya Power is likely to react to this?
They are pushing for an increase, actually 3 increases in power tariffs this year, and none of those have come through. In fact, it has gone the other way around. So generally, and they're hoping, and what happens every time there's an increase in power tariffs, the company records a very strong growth in profits for the first year as that filters through. So what you're seeing with Kenya Power, costs have been going up, but they have not been able to pass it on. But the government argues that since there's a lot of clean power and cheaper power that's going to come through, they're going to benefit in the longer term. But in the short term, the company will continue to see a lot of financial difficulty.
Let's turn our focus to the policy front, which has implications for business. Understanding that there's a new alcoholic drinks control amendment bill that is on the table. Should this be passed, firstly, what are the key changes that we can expect in the beverages industry, and how is it going to impact on the market?
Generally, the new regulation is just like kind of an add-on from the previous one, the 2011 one. Some of the key changes are celebrities and also sports personalities will not be allowed to endorse certain brands of alcohol. And generally, that's a company like East African Breweries tends to leverage off of that, and they would be affected in that sense. There's also additional regulation on where they can put their billboards and where they can advertise. So it predominantly affects the ability to advertise. East African Breweries came out saying that as long as the regulation was fair and was fair, then they would welcome it.
Sounds like both Kenyan and South African alcoholic beverage industries under fire there for advertising. But maybe let's turn our focus to aviation. Also understanding here that Kenya Airways is about to embark in the low-cost carrier territory. From your point of view, do you think there's space in the Kenyan market to do so?
No, definitely. There's a lot of potential for the low-budget airlines here in Kenya. Actually, the story was mentioning how they applied for a license a year ago but haven't used it until now, and they want to reapply for it. And the reason for that has been largely due to the fact that they are undergoing a lot of pressure from the government. They are trying to let go of employees and improve the company's efficiency, but they're not able to do that, and that kind of distracted them from setting up the budget airline. But definitely, we look at the region. Our road networks are very poor. Our road infrastructure is very poor, and there's a lot of reliance on air travel. And by tapping into the budget airlines, you'll be able to at least get more of the middle class using airlines instead of just the high middle class and also high-end customers.
Korea, a very interesting report released today that looks at, that ranks African cities in terms of the cost of living in that city. And it seems as if Mombasa has overtaken Nairobi in this particular ranking. From an investor point of view, what is attracting investors to Mombasa as against Nairobi at this time?
Generally, Mombasa is a much smaller city than Nairobi is. So per square area, then there tends to be, where the money is, there tends to be a lot of money in that area, and that generally pushes up the cost of living. But there's also been a lot of investment going into the area. All the reports of natural gas and also oil, possibility of oil, has tended to attract a lot of investment and a lot of people and expatriates into that area who have generally pushed up the cost of living. The resources in Mombasa aren't yet able to accommodate this influx of money, and that's what's been pushing up the cost of living there.
Of course, it will be interesting to see how Mombasa reacts to that investor interest. Let's also look at the interest of other investors, and in particular the Germans right now that are eyeing a lot of Kenyan acquisitions. I understand there's been a lot of private equity inflows from Germany into Kenya, with lots of activity in that front. Can you give us an understanding of which sectors are attracting the lion's share of private equity into Kenya from Germany?
The biggest one, I think, has been banks. You look at Chase Bank and also I&M Bank, which have attracted a lot of interest from the German development company. And generally, what we've noticed is they're looking for opportunities here in Kenya. I think a starting point would be the banks, and then based on the banks, they'll move into different sectors. But as you mentioned, the government is trying to make the investment climate here very conducive to attract foreign investors, and Chinese and Germans have really taken advantage of that.
Before I let you go, Korea, of course, a really good news story coming out of East Africa today is the steps that have been made towards financial sector integration with the proposition of a shared financial sector services system. Should this be implemented, what value do you think this will deliver for investors?
Definitely, there's a lot of value that will deliver for investors. If you notice, the Kenyan market does on a daily basis around $7 million of trading, but Uganda and Tanzania do much less than that, around $20,000 a day. So you look at the disparity between the two, there's not a lot of liquidity in those markets, and by integrating all the markets into one, you'll be able to tap into a larger investment pool that's investors across the region, and also there'll be improved liquidity for the investors who are looking to get in and out of stocks. Those are just some of the reasons that this could be. So it's a very exciting